Hello, and welcome back to the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Arthur, PMW's Multimedia Editor. On today's episode of the show, I'm joined by Esme Robinson, the Director of Platform Solutions at Epsilon. Esme and I, we said we couldn't believe we're doing this, but we begin to review 2025 and talk about some of the biggest missed opportunities for marketers from the year just gone. I won't spoil any of the opportunities we missed, but rest assured we provide solutions, and also we take a couple of guesses at some of the biggest opportunities there to be leveraged in 2026. So keep an eye out for those. With that said, it's time to sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. Esme Robinson, hello and welcome to the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast studio. How are we today?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
No, it's a pleasure to have you down. We said off air, it's your first time on a podcast. We've had a few debutantes come in and out, but it's always exciting to have one. Thank you for coming and joining our show for your first time. It's very exciting.
It is. I feel privileged to be here.
Nerves at all, or?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, definitely. But not too bad. I mean, this is a nice environment.
Yeah, we're tucked up in our lovely Twickenham studio, which we're very fortunate to have. And we're going to be talking today about the biggest missed opportunities for marketers from 2025. I can't believe we're already at the stage where we're talking about the year just gone.
I know.
And reflecting upon what we can do better in 2026. It has flown by, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. Yeah, crazy. I mean, I think Q4 planning gets earlier and earlier every year. So just hearing people start talking about that, you know, in June time, it's not that surprising that we're here already, but it does fly by.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much that's happened in what seems like a really short period of time, but then you sort of reflect in hindsight, and it's just sometimes marketing the industry, it can feel like everything takes an eternity to get like one campaign out of the ground from the bottom up, and then in other things it just moves at the speed of sound, and you struggle to keep your head above water. But here we are reflecting on the opportunities that have come and gone. So tell us, Esme, what's been the biggest missed opportunity of 2025 for marketers?
I think it's distraction is the biggest missed opportunity. I think distraction with all of the new things, the shiny things, the exciting things that are happening, which are amazing. And, you know, I think we're going to talk about it in a bit about what's coming for next year. But I think the missed opportunity is remembering about some of the fundamentals. Things, for example, like take any retailer, any brand who has an e-com store, but also physical stores. I don't know that there's that many people out there doing it really well where they're connecting what's happening in store to what's happening in the online world. And that's not just talking about people's, you know, customers' interactions with that brand directly, but also thinking about when they're messaging them, you know, in the open web, on social, in CTV, being able to connect all those different interactions and touch points to what's then happening in store, I think is a really big missed opportunity. Not just from how they're collecting kind of data and understanding what that interaction is. It's all well and good being able to understand who goes into store, you know, footfall, but what they're actually doing in there is indicative. What they're purchasing is telling you a lot more about who they are and how they engage with your brand. But then saying, well, that user actually had this customer journey before they chose to go in store and purchase, and then being able to connect that back up. And it is a fundamental, but it is also easier said than done. It takes the right technology, the right identity resolution to be able to really connect all of those dots, but it's worth investing in, and I think a big opportunity.
So essentially saying the blind spot there is you sort of only catch consumers at the end of the purchase funnel when you're not really understanding what's driven someone in store and where the purchase cycle might have initially started.
Yeah, exactly. It's a limited view to only understand when someone has purchased. Yeah.
Is retail media not doing not at least trying to address some of those challenges there? Particularly you look at the UK's retail media movement. It's very focused on a lot of retailers and grocers that are primarily in-store operations, and they're trying to marry the two worlds between digital data and the in-store brick and mortar experience.
Definitely, but it's almost the opposite way around. They're again using that data once someone has transacted, once they've converted, and then using it to create a relevant audience and target, which is great. That way around is excellent. But it's also then the other way around. It's particularly if you're thinking of off-site retail media, but on-site is equally as hard, even though it shouldn't be, where people are authenticated. But if if you're a user in the open web, you've got different types of digital signals, but you're not always got, an email address or something like that. Being able to say, I've delivered an impression to this person, they've then gone on to convert in store. That connection is really tricky, and there's not that many people doing it well at scale today. There is some. John Lewis is a really good example. Currys is another great example. There's some retail media networks out there that are working to join that online and offline, both on-site, off-site, and then in store. But again, it's because it's not easy, but the technology is there, the vendors are there, so it can be done.
Yeah, but you want to avoid, I guess, you're almost beginning at the finish line there with your data and having to work backwards to get back to the beginning.
Exactly, because that's not very scalable either.
No,
so you've got to think about how you manage to do that at scale. It can't take whole host of people weeks to be able to do this like data analysis. It's got to be happening in a kind of automated way, I think.
Well, can you elaborate there on what we could do better in 2026? You've identified this particular aspect as something that we might have missed. It's a missed opportunity from 2025. You mentioned there are some examples of retail media networks doing it well. For those listening that might have fallen afoul of this, what can they do to remedy it?
I think it's about working with the right people. It's if you don't have the identity resolution or the technology in-house, you need to work with the right people who can bring that to you. So clean rooms are a great environment to be able to do that, to connect the dots, to bring kind of all that digital data in that privacy safe environment that's able to connect the online and offline world. That's a great example of a technology that enables you to do that. However, it's also quite an investment. So if you don't have that, then you might want to work with a partner who has the right technology already or is able to do that for you. So Epsilon's obviously a good example. So John Lewis is one of those clients where we have their data, we're able to connect the online and offline world and bring that together to consistently report on what's happening in store and connect that to any of the kind of actions or interactions that they've had.
Moving on from the in-store blind spot challenge you've identified there, you said a lot of distractions in general are sort of the big theme that marketers have maybe clung to a little bit. We've been distracted with the new, and some of the old traditional, foundational things have been neglected. So what else has stood out to you as a missed opportunity from this year?
Well, I think we've got really excited about CTV, which is great. But there's been such a big focus on CTV as a reach channel. And I think we underestimate its ability as well to be able to understand who people are and how they're engaging with it. And in this world of, increasing agentic search and people maybe spending less time, not just on publisher sites, but directly interacting with brands on their own kind of owned properties, what isn't decreasing is the amount of time that people are spending engaging with, entertainment. And it's a really kind of high attention channel, but it's a missed opportunity to not recognize who people are when they're engaging with it and be able to then deliver something personalized and then measure the impact. So yeah, CTV, whether it's, kind of programmatic or through the subscription channels, still has enough signals to be able to recognize who people are and tie that back to value. And I think value is really going to be a kind of a common theme through what we talk about, because what's more important, people getting reach out there or really driving real value, and how you measure that really relies on understanding who someone is.
You can reach anyone across CTV these days too. I mean, the channel encompasses your linear traditional broadcasters, Channel 4 and the BBC, to the modern day streaming giants, Prime and Netflix. Now there's even a crossover between which broadcasters have which live events, and you're seeing the likes of Netflix have live events of their own that are their own owned content.
Yeah.
And then, Prime's invested in things like the NBA and the NFL, and the channel has become so broad, maybe too broad for its own good. And that might be what's driving some of the missed opportunities. People don't really realize the depth of data they can have access to when they use the channel appropriately.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And giving each of those different areas their own investment, understanding, success factors, I think is really, really important. And then being able to bring it over together to look at it as a channel as a whole. Yeah.
So that's the roadmap for 2026 to remedy this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. But again, it's easy. It is sometimes easier said than done, because on its own, it's just a single touch point. You have to be able to connect that back to a quality data set where you're able to tie together different touch points, recognize who that person is to deliver there's something relevant. So that's the bit that's really, really important and worth investing in, your own data quality, and then how you bring that together with some identity resolution to recognize your customers and reach them relevantly.
It's challenging for marketers, I suppose, listening to this, where there's this understanding that you need to incorporate many of these sort of newer channels. Not that CTV is a particularly new one, but it's always innovating.
Yep.
And there's many innovations that you can try and plug in and utilize if you have the opportunity and, the budget bandwidth to do so. But the neglect of the foundations, as you said there, we've got a little bit too distracted. What are some of the basics that you think marketers aren't spending enough time focusing on?
Sound like a broken record, but data. The data that goes in, like, your outcomes will only ever be as good as what goes into it. Whether you're talking about a human making decisions on a media plan of which channels, what context, or whether AI is doing that for you. Same for creative. Like, in some ways, some CTV has become more accessible because you've got AI tools being able to create content for you, which is great. But equally, if you don't know who you're delivering that to, then you're not going to get the outcomes that you need.
We see this, you mentioned AI there, and I know this is something you wanted to bring up. And we do see it with AI. I think it's a perfect example of jumping the gun a little bit. People talk about agentic AI and incorporating AI internally, externally. Basically, every brand, you've got to have some sort of relationship with it now. And we're beginning to hire people strictly based on AI-based positions. People are making up new positions, a chief AI officer who's a bot, essentially.
Yeah.
But if there's not the data to support these AI models, it's not really of much use to it, is it?
No, absolutely. Again, it's only as good as what you put into it. And if those signals are getting less as well, like I said, if people are interacting directly with brands less because they're able to kind of find, discover and buy all within this kind of agentic environment, then that's only going to continue to perpetuate and get even harder. So it's about how you do recognize where people are engaging directly or indirectly with your brand, or if you're a retailer, to be able to capitalize on that. And like I said, there's a difference between intent. You've got people, browsing and searching and discovering, but that purchase behavior in particular is absolutely crucial and has to factor into any decision making.
Now, we've spoken about a litany of new channels, retail media's in-store potential, CTV, what we do with AI and agentic AI in particular. What I can gather is you're very much married to we want to get rid of shallow signals. First party data is the name of the game. You collect good quality data and you can build out from there into any modern marketing pursuit you choose.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of those shallow signals. What are they and why are they being clung to as they are by many marketers?
Yeah, so by shallow signals, probably thinking of things like impressions, viewability, clicks in particular. I've got a bone to pick with clicks, absolutely. I don't think a click is a really good signal of intent really at all. In some ways, I can't believe that we're still relying on it. But in others, I do see why we're still here. Take, for example, just the fact that, Google Analytics 4, the free version, only relies on UTMs, on click-based data. There are versions, CM360, for example, where you can add impression data. But if you're only relying on clicks, it's only giving you this really kind of limited view of how someone's interacting, how they're engaging. And I don't know that it's a real true representation of someone's engagement with your brand.
So what are the signals that you should be looking for instead? I
think it's always got to come back to purchase. How are people transacting? How frequently are they transacting? What kind of brand loyalty do they have? What kind of customer churn do you have? What is their lifetime value? There's all these things that tell a bigger picture. It's why loyalty programs may sound archaic, but I still think are really, really useful ways of getting a lot of kind of authenticated, real interactions that are, I think you've got then a value exchange that people really understand. You know what you're signing up for, you know what you're going to get back for that. You create this brand loyalty. You get people to buy more often because they want to, because you're giving them something for that. And that really creates this nice kind of brand loyalty cycle, which is obviously where everybody wants to end up. But if your input is clicks, your output isn't necessarily going to be aligned with that kind of brand loyalty, and it will go like they'll separate. You want that, but you're driving here because you're making decisions on this kind of limited input.
Esme, you mentioned loyalty schemes there, and those are something I've always had an affinity for. They're something that me as a consumer, I lean on them a lot, particularly in the cost of living crisis. It's really useful for your relationship with grocers in particular, and things like the weekly shop, you know, whether it be Nectar, Club Card, a little membership, they can be really, really valuable. Do you know how long the Club Card's been around for Tesco? I found this out the other day.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Hazard a guess.
I'm going to say I think longer than I expect, 30 years.
You have nailed it.
Yes.
Did you really not know?
No, I didn't.
It was bang on 30 years.
Wow, there we go.
I was at Tesco Upfronts a couple of weeks ago, and they were celebrating 30 years of the Club Card. So it was 1995 when it was first brought in. I bring this up because I think it speaks to your point really well, where in the last 30 years of marketing, you could take the last 5 years and ask people how much of what we were talking about as marketers pre-pandemic are still useful today. And you might get people that say, oh, well, the whole industry's changed completely. It's all been uprooted. It's all these new channels and mediums. And here you go, leading the charge. You know, the popularity, loyalty schemes, they're just as popular as ever. Yeah. They're all digitized now. They've moved with the times, but Tesco Club Card, 30 years on, 1995.
That is amazing.
Still as valuable today as it has been. I mean, you talk about the basics.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is interesting to see that the technology, the value exchange hasn't changed, but what they've done with it and the ways that people are succeeding absolutely has. I think it's really nerdy, one of my favourite loyalty schemes is Lego. Lego do it really, really well because it's not just about points. It's like early access, it's exclusive access to certain sets and stuff. Like it really speaks to the kind of people who are going to be members and going to want to be part of that loyalty scheme. And I just think it's really well done.
Do you have a Lego series that's a particular favourite of yours?
Yeah, I generally do. God, even worse. Generally tend to go for the Star Wars ones.
I'm a big.
I've got a very good Grogu.
Listeners will know I'm a big Star Wars head, and I'm not ashamed to admit I'm quite a fan of some Star Wars Lego occasionally, and every now and then there's a Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings set that sneaks in. But I didn't know about the loyalty card.
You'll have to check it out. Yeah,
it's going to be the first thing I do after this podcast is check it out. Now, if we look ahead to 2026, what's something that we haven't spoken about or you haven't seen a lot of discourse about throughout the year that you think is laying in wait for the next 12 months as a pretty significant opportunity to be leveraged? You know, what can marketers jump on to make sure that when we're having this conversation in 12 months' time, they're like, well, I didn't miss out. I was all over it.
Well, I think similar theme, it's about fundamentals, but fundamentals into what we have spoken about in terms of AI and things. So if we think about the use of agentic AI, how are brands and retailers going to be optimizing their content, using more natural language, thinking about the things that are going to appear in agentic search? I think it's undeniable that that's the direction that we're moving in. So it has to be how you capitalize on it, how you bring the right data, how you use things like loyalty schemes and first-party data capture, how you encourage e-receipts in store, all these things that will give you that better input for a better output, making people more likely to be successful. Along with what I was saying earlier with not being too distracted by the shiny thing, is think about the fundamentals culturally as well. I don't know that the biggest AI shift in the next year is going to come from brand new tools. It's going to be not just how we use them and get the best out of them, but culturally, how we make sure they kind of fit into a business's organization, not just that, chief AI officer, but all the way down. Do people have the right tools, understand how to use it, understand how to get the most out of it as an organization, rather than it just being another silo that doesn't really, again, drive true value for the overall business?
Yeah, so internally making sure that everyone's got a grasp of AI and the business's relationship with it, rather than having a siloed AI team and then anything AI, like anything SEO, just sort of got dumped on the SEO team. And we don't really know how it works, but we trust it to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's fascinating. The search landscape is one that's just been so dramatically upended, but I really have no confidence looking at what might happen in the next 12 months, 5 years of search, because just last year we were talking all about deprecation of cookies, and I feel like that conversation's gone completely out the window, despite the fact that they're hanging around. Now everyone's worried about generative engine optimization instead, and appealing to the large language models and how can you gain citations, and ultimately it just comes down to the consumer, who I think are really the most neglected element of marketing in many ways. It's trying to understand what their behavior is going to be. I know you didn't bring it up specifically in this context, but I think the culture of consumer behavior is something that we really need to focus on a little bit more, because we're so obsessed with short-term metrics and performance and leaning on, hitting our KPIs quarter over quarter. But consumers' behavior is changing so dramatically, and a lot of these new tools like AI are bringing that on. And if you don't have a long-term view about how you can build a relationship with your consumers, it's not going to matter about who can implement all these tools, because you're not going to last very long.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about not letting the tools disintermediate that relationship between the brand and their customer. It is their customer, it's their relationship, even if they're being discovered in a new way. And that has to persist, because if we're in a world where there's, zero brand loyalty, then brands are going to struggle to exist. So
you're a big advocate then of making sure that there's still a sort of authentic human-led approach to implementing AI as you do it into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think AI on its own is going to be able to create that sense of authenticity or perpetuate that relationship in the way that it needs to for people to feel a connection. And it's kind of always talked about in marketing that if you have emotional marketing, if you make that connection, it's more successful than, again, those kind of short-term gains.
And people don't like it. I ask my friends, and they all use AI, but almost grudgingly.
Yeah.
But the idea of the people are still very reticent. The data supports this in the way that businesses use AI. There's almost this idea of big business have got this new tool that they can use to exploit customers even more. And I just think that shouldn't be the attitude. It's a tool to be leveraged to help improve a relationship with consumers and ultimately improve what a brand can offer them as well, if you're doing it sensibly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to come from two sides. Consumer behavior always dictates where trends go, because that's the thing that is most important, right? But then there's also things like even the other day, the announcement of Google is getting the strategic market status, for example. It was really interesting to see the CMA in their roadmap proposal for that. One of the points that they brought up was the issues that publishers have with the idea of how their proprietary content is feeding AI, Google AI mode, and other AI models. So how that part of, because we can't forget, obviously, if we're thinking about like the advertising ecosystem, you've got where people obviously engage with and actually read content, as well as like consumer behavior and purchase over here, and all of it has to work in sync for there to be a successful outcome, really. So if we think about the control that publishers are going to have as well, and what's important to them, and then when you think about like the idea of legislation and things as well, it'll be, like you said, it's unpredictable. We don't know where it's going to go over the next year. It's hard to know.
There's a lot of moving parts you're going to have to stay abreast with. And I suppose that's why we're here at PMW, to try and help you along. On that, Esme, we're going to move on to the Resell Me a Pen Challenge.
Okay.
To refresh the listeners and perhaps inform yourself of how this works, you've got 60 seconds to resell me an outdated product or service of your choosing. Before I put you on the clock, do you want to reveal to myself and the listeners what it is you're going to attempt to resell?
I do. I'm intrigued to know if you've heard of it. Teletext?
Oh, no, I haven't heard of teletext.
Okay,
so
I'll explain what it is.
Definition of what it is before
Okay, can I do that in my minute?
No, go for it.
You'll do it now? Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So teletext is a service that you access through your TV, which is pages of texts that are information, basically, that you can get about a whole range of things.
Okay, terrific.
Yeah.
There's your broad-based definition.
Yeah.
You've got 60 seconds. I'll warn you when there's 30 seconds remaining and when there's 10 seconds remaining.
Great.
But your time starts now.
Okay, so teletext was amazing. You accessed it through, like I said, through your TV, you had a button on your remote control. And it showed up this screen of text over the top of whatever program you were watching. I think BBC was the first to launch it back in the 1970s. And it was all about this connectivity, giving you information in what was quite an analog world at this time, like real-time information at the touch of your fingertips. And it had all sorts on there, like news, TV listings, film reviews, live sports scores, even games. They had like a quiz game. So shout out to Bamboozle, anybody that remembers watching that. Playing that game. It was an amazing little quiz game. And it was all, there was only 100 pages or so. So it was all about the quality, not the quantity of information. So it had that accessibility, easy to use, quality of information. And I think it's so polar opposite to where we're at in a world where we've got that massive influx of information and opinions on the internet today.
Wow, 6 seconds to spare. Got it under time. That's excellent. And I have got to do some research into teletext. It sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean,
Check out Bamboozle, Bamber and his family doing this little quiz game. Yeah, it was great.
Wow, I really like the idea of something that was all focused around quality rather than quantity, because it very much feels like the opposite of what we see today.
That's why I wanted to sell it. Yeah, I think it's a gem. And I don't think it's still live in the UK. I think it was like 2012 or something that it stopped. But in some countries, they do still have like a version of teletext.
When was this first introduced? I suppose
70s.
When was it peak? Through
70s.
The 70s.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. So 70s, BBC first with CFAX, it was called.
Wow.
And then different channels had their different versions.
And you used this yourself,
I did, yeah. You could even discover things like holidays and flights. Like, it was like weird. It had everything on there that you could imagine for this pre-internet world. It was pretty cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. For those of you who remember it, I'm sure that appeals to plenty of nostalgia.
Very, older millennials.
And if you're perhaps a little bit younger or not from somewhere who had teletext, I have no idea what they had in Australia. You've got some fun research to do for the evening there. That was amazing, Esme. Thank you very much for a terrific Resell Me a Pen challenge. And thank you again for joining us today on the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. I think that was amazing, especially considering it's your first one. You'll have to come back.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I would love to.
And that concludes this episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. A big thank you to my guest this week, Esme Robinson, the Director of Platform Solutions at Epsilon, clearly an expert in all things data collection and streamlining some of those fragmented and siloed new marketing spaces. It was also a very enlightening discussion about some of the missed opportunities across the year just gone, and crucially, how we could remedy those issues into 2026 to make sure we don't repeat our errors of the past. So big thank you to Esme. Of course, thanks to you, the loyal listener, for tuning in each and every fortnight as you do. We will be back in a week's time with another episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. In the meantime, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice and give us some love on social media across LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. With all that said, have an amazing week, and you'll be hearing from me again very shortly. Bye for now.